Good morning, or good afternoon, as the case may be. Welcome to Biometric Updates webinar on biometric physical access control. We're just waiting for everyone to sort of arrive and get settled. I'm Joel McConvey, and I'll be moderating today's panel. Thanks to everyone for joining. Hopefully, we'll have an enlightening and engaging talk this morning about biometric physical access control, which, for our purposes, refers to biometric technology used to control or mediate access to physical spaces like offices, restricted areas, and so on. You'll learn more as we continue. It effectively turns your biometrics, though, into a door key. So, we all know from sci-fi movies the old handprint to enter the nuclear silo or whatnot. That's effectively what we're talking about. The market for biometric physical access control products is mature but still growing. And today we'll hear from Alan Good, Chief Analyst for Good Intelligence, on some of the activities happening in that market. We're also welcoming panelists from RealSense and Alcatraz AI to demo some of their biometric physical access control products. And we'll hear from Chris Burt, Managing Editor of Biometric Update, who is fresh from a trip to Côte d'Ivoire for ID for Africa 2026, and Chris will be leading the Q&A following the demonstrations. And we encourage you to submit questions for discussion in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those after the demos from our providers. So to start, I will introduce our panelists. First off, we have Alan Good of Good Intelligence, with whom we collaborated on the 2026 Biometric Access Control Market Report and Buyer's Guide, which is available on biometricupdate.com and which we'll be discussing in some detail today. Hello, Alan.
Hi, thanks, Joel. Good to be here.
Next, we have another Alan, Alan Gans, Global Head of Sales and Strategy for California firm RealSense. Alan, welcome.
Thank you, Joel. Good to meet everyone.
And from Alcatraz AI, we have hardware product lead Pratik Shah. Hello, Pratik.
Hi, Joel. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
So again, thanks to everyone for taking the time to participate today, and thanks to everyone online for joining us over this lunch hour in Toronto, anyhow. Before we get to our panelists, I want to speak a bit more about the biometric access control market report and buyer's guide. This is one of a series of market reports produced by Good Intelligence and Biometric Update. It covers a bunch of ground with sections on biometric modalities, standards and testing, convergence with logical access as those two things increasingly come together, vendor profiles, and a full market analysis and forecast from Alan Good. If you are in the market for a biometric physical access control solution, this guide can help you choose the right partner, demystify some industry terminology, and give you a sense of what's driving the market. This includes use cases for small businesses and enterprises, which are growing to encompass things like sporting venues and residential options, as well as established uses in transport and corporate security. So, while it's more established than some biometrics applications, new technologies make choices facing organizations increasingly complex in terms of deployment, and success is conditional on selecting the appropriate technology and on careful deployment. So that's what we'll try and help with today. And with that, I want to pass it over to Alan Good of Good Intelligence, and he'll give you some more detail on the market forecasting side to give you a sense of where this market is and where it's going.
Thanks, Joel. Bear with me while I've got a couple of slides to show. So let me just share my computer. Okay. Oh, there we go. Right, here we go. So thank you, Joel. My name is Alan Good. I'm the CEO and Chief Analyst at Good Intelligence, based in the UK. We're a research and consulting firm specializing in digital trust and co-authors of the recently published Market Report and Buyer's Guide with Biometric Update. A lot of my content for this report also came from a recently published market analyst report that Good Intelligence published in January this year. I will briefly highlight some of the market dynamics that are driving adoption of biometrics for physical access control, and look at some of the key considerations for both SMB and enterprise users when choosing a biometric physical access control system. So 4 main drivers for biometric physical access control, biometric packs: security, convenience, cost savings, and tighter integration with other physical security applications. So quickly diving down into those: security. Biometrics used for physical access control provides an additional layer of security. You know who is entering your building versus authenticating a card or someone knowing a PIN. Biometrics can be used as part of a 2-factor authentication solution with a card, what you are and what you have, or standalone. You are the key. Certain biometric modalities, face in particular, when used in a physical access control system, can be used to detect and prevent tailgating. Convenience. It provides a convenient user experience. You always carry your biometric with you, and walking through a gate or opening the door without having to find an access control token, a card, a fob, or a mobile. Offers more convenience over other physical access control solutions. Cost savings. Biometrics offer potential cost savings when replacing other physical access control solutions, including card-based access control systems. In tokenless scenarios, it can reduce maintenance functions, e.g. no card or token to manage and replace. And when smartly deployed, it can also lead to receptionless entrances and can actually replace physical barriers and gates. Also, the ability for tighter integration with other physical security applications, including surveillance and safety applications, especially when the face is the modality chosen. Modern face biometric packs can detect and prevent tailgating, as I said, as the camera can be monitoring the activity. We look at the key sectors that are driving adoption at the moment. And as Joel said, it is a mature industry, a sector, but one that is seeing considerable growth. We're seeing key 7 physical access control areas of office. Biometrics for physical access control systems is an active area for their adoption, with examples being seen around the world for both greenfield sites, which is new build, and existing office buildings of all sizes. Newer AI-powered biometric physical access control solutions are enabling all sizes of office buildings to be able to deploy the technology. The ability to easily integrate biometrics into existing physical access control systems is a major driver for adoption. It also offers greater potential for hybrid physical logical access control systems, where a biometric can be used to gain access to office buildings and then to sign into digital resources. For residential, as well as the high-end residential property, especially apartments that need to manage multiple residents, enter an external door, there is growing availability of inexpensive biometric-enabled door lock equipment that can be purchased from major retailers for under $50 and can easily be integrated by either the homeowner or a locksmith. A significant proportion of activity is aligned with the smart home movement, with connected and integrating home devices. For this sector, support for Apple, Google, and Amazon Home automation solutions is an important consideration. Governments have been adopting biometric physical access control for decades, largely to support access to buildings and rooms that require high security and high assurance technologies. In healthcare, healthcare includes access control for medical centers, but also for the pharma and biotech sectors. A combination of industry regulation, including HIPAA in the US, and high security requirements to control access to medically sensitive areas creates demand for biometric physical access control systems. Controlled substances are subject to rigorous regulation within healthcare facilities, given their significant potential for abuse, dependence, and adverse outcomes when improperly managed. Institutions are mandated to enforce strict protocols for the storage and handling of these medications, including comprehensive tracking systems to monitor their distribution throughout the facility. And for transport, It's not about authenticating travelers, but the people that are involved in working in the transportation industry, especially where that's considered to be a critical part of critical national infrastructure. This includes access control for airport, rail, and maritime industries. Additionally, access control for the commercial haulage logistics industry. And there's a kind of a link into kind of a time and attendance systems as well. Education organizations, schools, universities, and colleges are increasingly turning to biometrics to secure their facilities. These systems can be integrated with other security tools like CCTV and alarm systems to provide comprehensive security management and complete audit trail of access events. They can also be linked to education, digital identity, and I think this is a really important kind of trend in this industry. Is the kind of the emergence of identity rather than just purely access control, where other applications can hang off the biometric, including payment in canteens and refectories. Biometrics can augment or replace token-based, mainly card access control systems in these situations. And in technology, really, I think with the rush to build data centers that we're seeing at the moment to meet the growing needs of AI compute, this will be an important sector for growth. We turn down to quickly look at the buyer's guide, and there's a lot of overlap between what is important for a buyer when considering a biometric physical access control system for SMBs and enterprises. If I go through these 10, and there are parallels with enterprises as well. Cost, does it meet your budget expectations? This is especially important with hardware-based deals that include installation, maintenance, and replacement fees. If the deal is linked to an identity and access management system, then does the fee involve a per-user fee? Technology type. Choose the technology and biometric modality based on security needs, e.g. iris for high security, facial for speed hygiene, and fingerprint for cost effectiveness. Then we look at accuracy and speed. The solution should have high accuracy, low false positives and false negatives, and be able to process access requests in all physical conditions, including low light and wet weather. Can the solution deal with peak times, e.g. the start of the business day for office use? Liveness detection, a really fundamental part of any facial biometric solution, whatever the application or sector. Is it certified? Is it tested? The standards like ISO 30107, 3, and which is considered to be table stakes when assessing whether a liveness detection solution is effective. And again, linked to accuracy and speed, environmental factors. Consider if readers work in direct sunlight, high humidity, or extreme temperatures. And bias, ensure the solution has been tested for bias and it is fair in its analysis of different types of presented biometric data. Number 6. Number 7, security. Does the supplier have physical security and cybersecurity certifications and adherence to best practice? Privacy and data protection compliance. So I think this is another critical component when assessing a biometric solution. Does it meet EU GDPR and other state legislation related to the collection, storage, and processing of biometric data? Scalability. Does it scale to grow with your business, supporting additional doors or users without a complete overhaul? And backup solutions. Is there a fail-safe to options like PIN codes or RFID cards if the biometric scanner fails? And then the contact versus contactless. So for enterprise, again, on top of what I've just discussed now, I think we're looking at kind of systems integration. Ensure compatibility with existing video management systems, alarms, and HR software. Also scalability, the system should also grow with your business. And performance, does the system meet and exceed performance requirements, especially at peak times? In high traffic areas, select systems with fast recognition speeds to prevent bottlenecks and research environment factors, including an evaluation of the installation location. Fingerprint systems may struggle in high humidity or very dry conditions, while facial recognition may struggle with extreme lighting or for some face masks. Okay, just a quick one to conclude my presentation. Looking at the forecasts, we forecast that there will be over 913 million biometric physical access control users by 2028, up from a forecast of 566 million users in 2026. Thank you. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Alan. A very enlightening and informative presentation. A couple of interesting things I think to touch on come out of that. One, you noted sort of access to medicines in hospitals and healthcare facilities, and I think the default is to think of biometric physical access control as access to a space, but there are also uses in things like gun safes where
Yeah,
you're preventing people, the wrong people from getting a certain object or material. And I think it's also worth noting that I believe in the report we sort of observe that increasingly it's facial biometrics that are being adopted. You still have fingerprint uses, you have palm, but the sort of most popular modality at this point appears to be face, and that's kind of where people are moving. So,
absolutely.
uh, thanks again. And I want to put some discussion questions to our panelists now. Anyone can answer, Alan, Pratik, and Alan, before just we get to the demos. And so Alan Good just walked us through a bunch of the advantages of biometrics for physical access control. But I wonder, from your perspective, from the provider perspective, what are the key advantages over other physical access control tools that biometrics provide?
I'm happy to take the question
Sure.
first.
Thanks,
So
Alan.
I think first we need to make a distinction between two modalities, one-to-one versus one-to-many. And biometrics don't necessarily need to replace the card or the mobile credential in one-to-one mode. By storing the template on the card or on the wallet, you're really dramatically increasing the level of security. So kind of under the existing paradigm, Joel, if you drop your prox card and I pick it up, I'm you, because the security is tied to the card, not the individual. But again, by storing that template on the card itself, you're dramatically increasing the overall security profile. So that versus one to many, where we really have the ability to greatly enhance the user experience. The scenario, users just presenting their face, it can be completely frictionless. With today's technology, you can have full walkthrough experience, and this is really relevant in environments where you need to move large groups of people from an unsecured to secured space. So think stadiums, airports. Major League Baseball, I think, is a great example of that. And their go-ahead entry, they've replaced the ticket with just the face, so you can literally walk into the stadium. And by the way, there's an ROI here, because the stadium, the venue, is not making money when people are standing in line. They're making money when fans are sitting in their seats ordering beers, hot dogs, and merchandise. So it's really about enhancing that customer experience. But you don't have to start with that. You can start by enhancing the current infrastructure, and over time add to that.
Yeah.
And Pratik, what do you think?
No, I second what Alan said. In addition to that, I think one of the key benefits of having biometrics at the door over the traditional physical access control, I'll get a little bit into that as I'm sharing my presentation as well, is that it 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 sort of starts to meet the need of the current security posture where you don't have to have trade-offs with convenience, people forgetting badges, having security in place, being future-proof, just all of that together. The hard truth is usually security operators have to make trade-offs, but with biometrics and the way modern biometrics are done, you usually don't need to. And an additional point I'll make is because you now also have the infrastructure at the door and sensors, sophisticated sensors at the door, you are now able to do things that traditional hacks has never been able to do, such as tailgating. Um, People open doors to others, just natural human behavior, but that's one of the biggest risks in security postures that exist in most enterprises and almost every other vertical that Alan shared. So having a biometric device at the door will allow you to kind of preserve some of that.
So more convenience, more security. I wonder, has anyone on the panel actually entered a stadium, a Major League Baseball stadium or otherwise, with biometrics yet?
I have.
You have. Okay. Yeah. And what was that experience like for you, Alan?
That was fantastic. I was partly responsible for its implementation. I was wearing a different hat with a different company, so it's something I enjoyed being a part of.
Satisfying.
Yeah.
Satisfying. Um, let's talk about AI, because AI is the big disruptor right now. I wonder, how is AI expanding biometric physical access control systems sort of beyond authentication into broader operational and security intelligence?
Yeah, yeah. I think like I said earlier, tailgating is a pretty big thing in general. Like you can have that as a security intelligence on top. There's a lot more that you can do just because you again have sophisticated sensors. You can detect people loitering. You can detect you can define zones that are vulnerable from your own security posture perspective, and now you can have 24/7 monitoring in that space without necessarily having a dedicated guard who may or may not, as we all know, like people make take breaks, things happen, you essentially now start to have a much higher posture of security around your entire campuses. Make sure that it's not just allow people getting in. Of course, you have AI in terms of liveness and just facial authentication, but a lot more starts to become possible, especially at the edge.
Yeah, I think with increasing processing at the edge of vision AI, as Jake said, the camera is really becoming an intelligent sensor, not just an authentication device. Historically, biometrics answered a single question: is the person who they claim to be? Now we can really understand what's happening around the authentication device. And Pratik mentioned tailgating. That's a great example. I'll show you an example and demo that to you in a second. And I can tell you by the way that increasingly we see customers evaluating the solution, not only for the authentication performance, but that broader vision and AI capabilities. I'll
That's a
just yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just say that the future isn't knowing who's entering the door. It's really understanding what's happening around the door.
Right. And so a good segue. The next question to put to both you or Alan Good as well, anyone who has an answer, is what are the key considerations for buyers when they're choosing a system for biometric physical access control?
So we think about it in terms of five different things in general that those tend to be considerations, and those are fairly well aligned with what Alan actually shared in his report as well. The first and foremost is obviously security, being able to actually reliably work across all the time, across any of your environments, for anyone, anywhere, in general, across any geographic location is a pretty big thing. Because the moment you start to have a single place where it doesn't work, then you start to have to build kludgy systems together, and that's where a lot of the trade-offs happen. The second is, in our opinion, convenience. You really don't in this day and age. Not only do you not need people to stop in their tracks to have to do something to authenticate themselves, but also it's just as important for modern security teams to not have to take on additional burden to be able to deploy these. So something that is a drop in addition or works off the shelf without needing complicated ACS integrations or having you to change your existing access control infrastructure is a pretty big thing. Being future proof, being able to scale, reducing the total cost of ownership is a pretty big thing. And then one of the most important as it comes to biometrics, because this is where we see a lot of trip ups happen, is in general around privacy. It's not just around being compliant with GDPR or BIPA or anything along those lines. Of course, those are important, but it's building privacy by default. It's privacy by design. Only collecting the data that you absolutely need, making sure that you safeguard the user's data with utmost care, encrypt it, do not store any PII, delete images that you like as soon as enrollment is done, and things along those lines. Also, keeping a fairly good segregation between the ACS systems and the biometric systems we've seen is a really good model because it allows us to be compliant regardless of whichever new regulation comes up.
Alan, what do you tell buyers?
No, I think first of all, those are great points. I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to the system's ability to perform well, very well in real world conditions. And I always use my as an example. I use my face 100 times a day to access this thing. I'm annoyed when I have to enter my passcode, but I never think about where and when I'm using it. Right, it just works everywhere. So how do you take that same experience and bring it to the physical world? So it's really about that user experience. all the ingredients of how we get there, the accuracy of the matching algorithm, the liveness, the ability to deal with the environment, those are just the building blocks to get to that user experience.
All right. Well, on that note, I think it's time for our demos. So, Alan, I'll let you kick it off with the RealSense's demo. So, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Sure. So I'll switch to another computer in one moment. Let me just give you a quick overview on who RealSense is. So we were, up until about 10 months ago, actually part of Intel. We spun out. We're a separate company today. And just for your knowledge, there's two lines of business. One is depth sensing for robotics. So that's everything from autonomous motor vehicles, drones, humanoids, any mechanical device that needs to perceive its environment. And we provide about 60% of all the vision solutions in robotics globally today. So it's a big part of our business. And then the other side of the business is RealSense ID, where we've taken a lot of that same core IP and we've built a module that is designed specifically for deploying face recognition in the physical world and really going back to that experience, just getting a tremendous user experience. But to achieve that, we've implemented a number of unique features in the device. We have two cameras, the IR and RGB, so we can capture in complete darkness to very strong backlight conditions. We have onboard face matching, very strong. We have exceptionally strong liveness detection. If someone trying to spoof the system, we can detect that. We have a wide field of view in the vertical position. But all the ingredients that we've put into this in a very, very small form factor, it's a fifth the size of my business card, allows us to deploy the technology at physical touch points. The interesting thing is that we just came out with our latest series, which is the 500. It's the RealSense ID Pro. And in that, we've increased the processing power dramatically. So we now have 1.5 effective tops, which gives us a couple unique abilities. One, we can do full walkthrough facial authentication. So you don't have to stop. You can literally run by the sensor. But two, going back to some of the comments we had in our discussion, we now have the ability using Vision AI to detect things like tailgating or object recognition. But the key is that everything's happening at the edge. There's no dependency outside of that small module. I'm going to get up and switch here real quick. I just want to demo this capability to you guys. Give me 1 second. Can everyone hopefully see my screen?
Yeah, and while this is happening, maybe we can all close our cameras just to give Alan the full spotlight.
Well, thank you. So I'll show face recognition. First, it's almost table stakes today. Obviously, you need extremely strong technology behind it, tier one listing in NIST, and very strong liveness detection. But this is the part that I think is the least exciting. The ability to do some advanced analytics, like tailgating. So what we're doing here is body part classification. So we're able to detect, all the pieces of the body that would be in a particular area. So simple example, if you're going through an e-gate, you see 3 feet, people normally have 2 feet. So a third foot indicates that someone else is in the space. We provide the metadata. Our partners build the logic on top of that. But again, everything is happening in real time. One example, another, which is pretty cool. And this is skeletal mapping. So this is important, if you want to be able to determine kind of intent, the person is approaching a sensor. And again, we provide the metadata so our partners can, build it out, build off of that, and drive any intelligence. So those are just two real quick examples. Advanced analytics using Vision AI that RealSense is now deploying in their.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Alan.
Yeah.
And I'll just pass it right on over to Pratik for Alcatraz AI's demo.
Thank you. Let me share my screen and then you let me know when you can see it.
I think we can see it.
All right. Hello everyone. Just to give you a little bit of background around Alcatraz. We're a company founded by Vince Gaitharjev about 10 years ago. Our mission is we're here to make facial identity the most trusted, scalable access credential on the planet. And it's not just as a supplement, but as the standard. We're really here to lead that transformation. As I was mentioning a little bit earlier, legacy access control forces compromise. That's just the hard truth. And the modern security posture requires us to do better in terms of providing security, in terms of providing a frictionless experience, in terms of being privacy centric, scalable, and really future proof. With the product that you're just about to see, you get all five. So here's a quick video that demonstrates it. It's really frictionless, and we don't really need users to stop at all. So that's the RockX. So this device, it's a modern security platform at your door. It combines liveness, facial authentication, tailgating protection, a SIP intercom, all in one device, as well as video on-with video at the door. It's not just a reader; it's a modern security platform at the door. Privacy is built in; it's in the foundation. It's never bolted on. Every user consents to enrolling. Data is always encrypted. It stays anonymous. No face data is ever shared with the ACS. And furthermore, there's a separation between the ACS as well as the biometric platform. The bio always stays with the RockX and the ACS holds the PII. Neither system can see each other's data, and it's a privacy infrastructure that's designed for compliance and trust. Furthermore, we're built for the real world. Like I was saying before, you don't need an ACS integration. You don't need a new ACS. It drops into your existing access controls infrastructure with the RockX sitting in between your badge reader and the panel. The panel really sees the RockX as just another reader. You can deploy it within hours, scale across sites, and stay future ready because there's really nothing that you need to change. Furthermore, to help enhance adoption across biometrics for enrollment, we offer three different types of enrollment, with autonomous enrollment being a key part of it. Users can enroll remotely, they can enroll in person, or they can enroll automatically as they're badging in, depending on the situation and the use case that you have. It's designed for everyone, everywhere. It works in any lighting or any weather condition or any face. It's accurate across demographics and it works across any environment. No excuses, no exclusions. Again, top-rated NIST algorithms and the machine learning adapts over time. So you only need to enroll once, and you will always, even if you grow a beard or things along those lines, that doesn't matter. We'll continue to authenticate you. Also, security doesn't have to be clunky. RockX fits in your high design environments. It mounts really cleanly on your turnstiles, or you can embed it as you saw it in the video before, and you can even customize to match your aesthetic. So all in all, think of this as just enterprise-ready access. It's a powerful security platform with centralized management with the Rock Cortex, built-in compliance, and you can scale seamlessly without any integration headaches because you don't need any integration. And we are trusted by some of the boldest brands on earth. People that have something to protect and in general cannot lose or have gaps in their security. We protect more than 4 million users daily. We've been adopted by majority of the top 10 AI companies in the world. We are the guardians of AI, and we are operating across 150 countries around the world, and our devices are built in the US. That's all I had.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Pratik. And I'll invite everyone back to camera now. And I know we're going to have about 20 minutes for questions, and I know Chris probably has some lined up. But after thanking you for those presentations, very cool stuff. I want to start the question session here. The walkthrough technology, that's very Minority Report, Total Recall kind of science fiction type stuff. And of course, with any of this stuff, you have people worried about privacy. And so my question is, how important is it for providers to deliver on that privacy as a way to establish long-term trust in biometrics?
I would say it's extremely important. It's we're still in the early stages of adoption for biometrics, and I think I think it's important for us to draw a very crucial distinction, at least as it comes to face as a biometrics. There's a very big difference between facial recognition, which is what we usually see and have the idea from sci-fi, and a difference between facial authentication. So facial recognition, put very simply, is if you can identify a person, you can within a crowd or even one-on-one, if you can identify a person, then that is facial recognition. Facial authentication is a little bit different. It's facial authentication is, does this person belong here? The system doesn't need to know who the person is, as long as the system can decide that the person belongs here. That's the key, and that's where privacy lives. Because in the first piece, you need to identify the person by name, by face, or some sort of a PII that tells you, hey, this is Pratik that's trying to walk through this door. Versus in facial authentication, hey, this is badge number 12345 that's trying to walk through this door, right? Now you've abstracted that out. You're no longer identifying the person. Furthermore, you're also encrypting the face, and it's just a mathematical representation, which is not a face at the end of the day. Even if someone gets access to it, it's really hard to be able to do anything with it because it's not your face. It has gone through some sort of a model that converts your face into that, and you need really sophisticated tools to be able to re-engineer that, even if that's possible. So privacy becomes really, really key, and this distinction is really, really key, because the more data you tie to your biometric, the more surface area you leave for compromise as soon as someone identifies you. If you just don't have any of that data, then you have privacy built in, because even if someone get access to that, what are they really going to do?
Yeah,
Alan, what about you?
yeah,
Yeah.
well said. And we play in that authentication space exclusively. I think it's also privacy needs to be by design. So going back to that template and how you manage that template, in our case, we can store the template on the device with no other PI that's stored. But we can also, going back again to that one-to-one use case, we can store it on the credential. So it's immediately deleted once the authentication happens. So it boils down to how does the customer want to deploy. But from the design phase, we've built privacy in as a critical component, and it has to be. There's no other option.
Hmm. Thank you. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Chris Burt, a managing editor of Biometric Update, to lead the remainder of the Q&A session. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks to Alan and to Pratik for some very enlightening presentations. And I hope that everyone on the call is getting a better idea of what the biometric physical access control system that will suit them is, and how they should go about selecting and implementing that system. But yeah, to dive into that, we've got the first couple questions in. I'd like to thank those people and invite the rest of you to chime in with your questions as well. And then I'm also going to ask my own question that, a couple of burning questions that came to mind during the discussion. One of which is, Alan Good referred to the importance of researching environmental factors earlier on. We've had we've kind of had a couple of moments touching during the discussion on what those factors are, and how they play into your considerations in terms of both the system you select and how you implement it. And of course, I'm sure most of us who've gotten together for this event are aware of, the practical challenges with things like doing facial authentication at night, right? What if it's a dark environment? And so the question that I wanted to pose, Pratik and Alan Gans, particularly to you guys to start us off here, is: are we talking about one market, or are those two different things? Is there the office, controlled? It's the airport, so they make you walk in this place at this pace and blah blah blah. Is that a different market than a construction site where people are they're employees and they're, maybe walking in a couple at a time and not even tailgating, but just wanting to get in and get the day started or whatever. So are those two different markets, Pratik, or is that all really one thing at this point?
So that's a great question, Chris. I think those aren't two different markets, but those are two different moments in time.
Right.
I think
Okay.
Joe was mentioning Minority Report and others, and I think it brought to mind the Arthur C. Clarke quote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and I think we're at a
Yep.
point where we're at magic now. The restrictions where you had to walk in a certain way, where you had to walk in a line, go through this certain motions, is because the technology hadn't adapted to account for those edge cases. But we have now. For example, with the Rock X, you can work in night, you can work in the rain, you can work against 120K lux in the background. So in the middle of the Arizona desert in the summer, you can work in the Arctic environments, you can work in sea brigs, for example. Vandalism protection is one of the key things there. Dust protection, having to work in snow, like dust storms, snowstorms,
Right.
all of those are really, really critical. And once you start to deploy these capabilities, then you start to remove the friction that was put in place because the devices and the technology couldn't handle those frictions before. So to me, those are just two different moments in time. We are now at a point where we don't really need some of those additional measures to make sure people are complying and the device is actually working. We can make sure that the device just works.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go back to Apple again, but I never think about where I use this. Right, it just works everywhere. That same experience that we need in the physical world. And you mentioned the airport as an example. You described it as a controlled environment. I would actually say it's one of the most challenging environments because depending on the time of day and the season, you can have
Right.
near complete darkness through to very
Agreed.
strong backlight entering the sensor. So it has to perform well across all those different conditions. And I think traditionally, not traditionally, in the past, the biometric authentication devices were built for demos, not for the real world. And I think we've moved past. Apple has set that expectation, and I want that same experience I hold in my hand as I'm entering my office. I don't want to think about it. I just want it to work.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. It's just got to work. And
Yeah.
yeah, the facial authentication on our phones is absolutely, I think, an easy way to understand what's possible there, right? The world of what's possible. I have another question, but I'm going to have to put it on hold for the moment because there are a few good questions here that we should get to, and two that I feel like really overlap strongly. So, Alan Good, I want to bring you in for a minute to talk a little bit about modalities. We've got a question from Alex: are there common scenarios where you still recommend fingerprint over facial recognition? And then Offer asks, what is your take about voice biometrics for access control? Yeah, so, Alan, as you delved into this segment and the way that face is growing within it, but also the overall landscape of biometric physical access control. What did you find in terms of the breakdown of modalities?
Yeah, I think traditionally fingerprint has been the modality of choice, especially for the lower cost scenarios, excluding high security defense or critical national infrastructure. And it still has an important part to play, especially for, we're talking about environmental. You've got to have a pretty good optical sensor to be able to work in a lot of extreme conditions. Yeah, I think it's horses for courses in terms of modality. Another modality that we haven't mentioned is Palm, which is I think an emerging one we're seeing in the payments industry and coming into we're seeing dual Palm and facial recognition readers in the payments world. And I can't see why. This is what's really fascinating is that we mentioned travel. We mentioned I was at Passenger Travel Expo a couple of weeks in London and demoing the biometric corridors and it's in an airport, and it's very, very similar in terms of the application. So, same technology, same facial apps being used, but in slightly different contexts. Again, it's consent you know, to to be allowed access. So I think, in terms of, the modality, you need to look at the a wide range, and hopefully in the report that we've jointly produced, it gives kind of a start, an indication of what to look out for and how to choose one modality over the other.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. We did absolutely, of course, talk about that as we were putting the report together. And I would like to invite Alan Gans or Pratik to weigh in on modalities. Obviously, you're coming from the facial authentication perspective, but is there a scenario where you might, for instance, recommend a multi-biometric approach, or an experience? I'd also invite you to share an experience if you found that somebody, you're talking to a customer who says, well, we've got this system and it's just not working out for us, so we need to switch to face. Yeah, any insights you'd like to toss in there before we move along?
Yeah. Go ahead, Alan.
No, go ahead, Pratik. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, we run into this situation a lot where people have been using other modalities or devices of other modalities, be it fingerprint or iris, or even for that matter, palm, in some of their deployments. And the unfortunate part comes down to just reliability, at the end of the day. For the customers that we're working with, it's not acceptable that the devices not work even for a moment. And the problem with some of these things is just they either have too many moving parts or they require cumbersome interactions on the user's parts, which essentially becomes too many moving parts because then devices break and things like that. So the beauty about the facial modality is it replicates what humans know intuitively to do, which is just look at something and identify. And that covers 99% of the cases. Really, the only situation where you will run into an issue with facial modality, and this is where the laws of physics break, is where you've got identical twins. I know there's work being done to try to solve for that problem. Hopefully, we'll get there. But even in some of those, like less than 1% of the use cases, you can add an additional factor with something you have, like Alan was mentioning before, and you get to a point where you're able to resolve pretty quickly. So just based on what I see in the market with the customers that I work with, um, face as a modality is has a lot of advantages, and just by nature eliminates a lot of the disadvantages that come from the other biometric modalities. There may be a situation in the future where for some of the really, really high security use cases, you do need multiple modalities of biometrics at the door. I just haven't run into that yet.
Great. I want to throw that over to Alan, but I also want to invite you, Alan, to also speak to what Pratik just mentioned about the identical twins, because Ray asked that exact question as well. So that's if you could weigh in on both of those, Alan.
Sure. So I think first off on facial, I think it obviously has some inherent benefits over other modalities. I think it really boils down to, again, that user experience, which modality provides that experience. What becomes really interesting, given, for instance, our focus on vision AI, we can capture a lot of actionable insights from video. And there's at least two other biometrics that you could capture, from the same video, including your iris and your palm. So it's not a stretch to think that you could now start layering modalities depending on the objective. And identical twins, could be an example where, if there's an identical twin, you might want to add another modality or a second factor. But I can tell you, I mean, it was more of an issue 10 years ago. It's less of an issue today. Even identical twins, as children, that they're truly identical, and it's hard to distinguish the two. But as you mature, as you age, you're exposed to different environments. Even identical twins will separate. What I tell people is that if the mother can tell the difference between the twins, then we can. But it also goes to how stringent you want to set the thresholds. You can make it very, very low, and everyone will come in, or you can make it higher based on the nature of the environment you're trying to protect. but I'd say, identical twins were more of an issue 10 years ago. They're really not an issue or as much of an issue today.
Very interesting. Very interesting stuff. That's very encouraging, surely, and I think while you're probably not going to run into that many scenarios where like an employer has identical twins as employees, I think it does very much speak to the power of the technology today, right? I also want to just before I move on, offers point about voice. I would, say that from my perspective in observing what's going on in the biometric access control space, we're seeing that really, maybe not exclusively, but largely, that's a logical access control concern for certain kind of interactions. This is your call center scenario, and so on. The practical value of that going forward will have to be the subject for another webinar on another day. But we've got lots of great questions here. So another one from Alex. What measures do you implement to ensure that remote or unsupervised enrollment is as secure as in-person enrollment? So, practical, I'm going to go back to you first because I remember that being part of your presentation about the different enrollment options.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that they're all secure?
That's a great question. So, the first and foremost part of the security is that we, for the remote enrollments as it stands today, we require the security operators to be the initiators of the enrollment, in the sense that they have to generate unique links that are time bound, and expire in certain durations before the user has to enroll. Of course, that's the, we're working through. There's feedback that we've received along these lines, and there's things that we're working through, which I won't get a lot into, but for some of the enterprises use case that we're looking into, just how you would protect any of your digital assets with SSOs, with multi-factor authentication before being able to allow someone to authenticate, identity verification. Those are like, with government issued IDs and things like that. Those are some of the things that are really strong ways of protecting and making sure that the person that's supposed to be enrolling remotely is the person that is enrolling remotely, because that's obviously going to be paramount.
Yeah, Alan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, from RealSense's perspective, our DNA is Intel, so we're providing the core capabilities, which our partners then build solutions around. So that would be in the layer that our partners add value. So, today, there's a number of vendors providing identity verification solutions, extremely strong. Make sure that one, it's a properly issued government ID, be it driver's license or the holder of that ID is the correct individuals. So we have partners, for instance, that are embedding our sensor into document authentication devices so that when the person lays the ID document down, they're verifying it's a properly issued government ID, it's current. They're extracting the image and then using our module to capture a live image and compare them one to one to make sure that it's a valid individual. So, but really good question.
Yeah, and a good point to Alan to raise that this is a common challenge, right? This is not even this is not a physical access control consideration, right? This is
Right.
any situation in which you are using a biometric as a credential. You need to be, solid that the binding is proper and so on. And so there have been a lot of advances in this area over the last few years in terms of architecture and the technology. And I mean. My sense is that the biometric physical access control area is not actually the area in which this is the most challenging. You have some more, sort of more remote scenarios where this is even harder. So yeah, I think there are real good answers to those concerns.
Sorry.
Yeah, Alan.
On the question of remote, do you see an advantage of face for visitor management? So I can enroll at home and then I can rock up to a building or
100%.
office for a meeting. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
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 100%. Knowing who is going to be visiting ahead of time is obviously pretty critical. Like Chris mentioned, this is a situation. If we kind of scale back, this is there's other areas like if you any kind of step-up authentication, if you want to recover your bank account, if you want to reset your password, or if you want to do any of those things that allows you access to secure assets, be it digitally or physically, the question of identity always comes into place. Different modalities, different use cases, different verticals have their own ways of verifying that identity. In the case of enterprise, it almost always ends up being, log in with your username, password, and do some sort of a one-time MFA. And if you need the additional step, then you also potentially can get identity verification, as Alan was mentioning, for higher security use cases. But depending on other verticals, there might be other modalities that are already used today to make sure that the person they are who they are.
Absolutely. So one more question here I want to get to is in the moment of time of the authentication scenario, how many individuals, this is a question about limitations, how many individuals walking through a reasonably controlled entrance at the same time could be authenticated at speed, and which area size would be the maximum? In other words, what limitations exist in terms of volume of authentication and area?
Alan, do you want to take this first, and then I can give a
Sure.
little bit more. Yeah,
I think it's less of a technology limitation because we'll recognize everyone in the field of view. It's a field of view question.
yeah,
So, for instance, our sensor by design has a wide field of view on the vertical for ADA compliance. So we want to be able to recognize someone in a wheelchair or through to a player.
Right.
The field of view so wide in the vertical, more narrow in the horizontal. But we can change that field of view, and we have for certain implementations where there's a desire to have a wider field of view in the horizontal than the vertical. So it's not a technology limitation. It's what's the trade-off that you're trying to achieve at the point of access between the vertical and horizontal field of view.
yeah. I think the field of view is pretty paramount here, and I second. It's not usually a technology issue. So with the RockX, we are constantly measuring the depth of the person from the device itself. Now, it's very rare that two people are so close to each other that they're just walking lock and step through the door. Usually, that's never the case. Most likely, it will happen with double doors, which we support because we support up to 2 meters of authentication. But we're able to authenticate pretty much everyone that's walking through the door because if we think about it, like we do the throughput that we basically say is not about accuracy, like how fast we can match a person. We basically say, every 2 seconds, one person can kind of walk through the door. So it's like, think about it like if you're going to a subway station or something like that, you pretty much are covered for that high throughput use case. And the same stays true for any of the other use cases as well. It's not realistically, you're very unlikely to run into a situation where um, you will have two people walk together and not get authenticated just in general. And this is another place where I'll highlight tailgating, hence, is a very critical component, right? So if you've got both people that are enrolled and are walking through, you'll get both of them enrolled. But at the same time, if one of them is trying to be a bad actor and actually walk through along the lines, tailgating intelligence will tell you that, okay, there was a tailgating event. It was the person went in on this person's credential. There's an access event. There's a security event, that's raised appropriately, and then the team can dispatch their security accordingly.
Very good. Well, it's always reassuring when our questions, the questions that our audience have good, solid answers that they can feel confident about when deploying the technology. So I'd like to again thank everyone who posed those questions. A really good set of questions, and thanks to you guys for answering them. And at this point, I will hand it back to Joel to finish up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great discussion. And so I guess to close, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen. Very much appreciate your time. Thank you to Pratik Shah, Alan Gans, Alan Good, and Chris Burt. You can learn more about Good Intelligence at goodintelligence.com. Alcatraz is at alcatraz.ai, and RealSense is at realsenseai.com. And of course, I encourage you to check out the Biometric Physical Access Control Report, which is available for free at www.biometricupdate.com. So thank you again. I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.